The night the health inspector collapsed in my restaurant, I thought it was a heart attack. The moment they found poison in his system, I realized someone wanted me gone. But when the police cuffed me in front of my staff, my wife stood there crying, just a little too perfectly. That's when I knew it wasn't just a setup. It was a trap. My name's Daniel Holt, and for 12 years I ran one of the best restaurants in Boston, Holt and Hearth. We'd just earned a Michelin star, the kind of recognition I'd dreamed of since culinary school. My wife, Laura, managed the business side, and our chef, Marco Rossi, was like a brother to me. We built that place together from nothing. But success makes enemies sometimes the ones standing beside you. The night it happened, the city's chief health inspector, Mr. Dempsey, came for an unannounced visit. He was strict but fair, and I wasn't worried. Our kitchen was spotless. Still, I noticed Marco looking tense, glancing at Laura between plating courses like they were sharing a secret. Dempsey ordered the house. Special rosemary lamb with truffle butter. Marco insisted on preparing it himself. An hour later, the inspector was on the floor, gasping for air. The next morning, the news headline read, "Poison scandal at Michelin restaurant owner under investigation." They said the lab found traces of ricin in the sauce. The same sauce only I had signed off on. Laura told the detectives I'd been under a lot of stress, that I'd argued with Dempsey weeks earlier about unfair grading. I hadn't, but she said it so convincingly, I almost believed her. Marco backed her up, said he saw me near the spice rack that night where the poison had been found. I swore I was innocent. I begged them to test for fingerprints, for surveillance footage, anything. But the cameras in the kitchen, disabled. The restaurant was shut down. My reputation destroyed overnight. And Laura, my wife, froze all our accounts, citing legal precautions. It didn't make sense. The woman who once promised me forever was now feeding the press stories about my violent temper. I didn't recognize her anymore. 2 weeks later, I was standing outside the courthouse, broke, angry, and ready to give up, when a man in a gray suit approached me. He handed me a business card and said, "Mr. Holt, your mother asked me to find you if anything ever happened. She left something in your name, something you need to see." I frowned. My mother's been dead for 5 years. The man smiled faintly. "Then, you're going to want to hear what she left behind." That moment changed everything. The man's name was Edward Grant, a corporate lawyer from a firm I'd never heard of. He handed me a sealed envelope with my name typed neatly across the front. Inside was a key, a bank address, and a letter written in my mother's handwriting, the same looping cursive I remembered from birthday cards when I was a kid. "Daniel, if you're reading this, then someone has tried to ruin you. Go to the Lockridge Bank. Safety Deposit Box 312. Do not tell anyone, not even Laura. There's more to our family than you know. Protect yourself. Trust no one." I stared at the words until they blurred. My mother had died from a stroke, or at least, that's what Laura told me. But this letter, it didn't sound like something written by a dying woman. It sounded like a warning. Edward slid a folder across the table. "Your mother owned assets, many assets, offshore accounts, trusts, and something called the Holt Foundation. She left it all under a sealed clause, triggered only if you were ever charged with a felony." My heart stopped. "Charged? You mean she knew this would happen?" He shrugged slightly. "She prepared for it." Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments about which country you're watching this video from. Enjoy the story. The next morning, I drove to Lockridge Bank. The clerk led me to a private room, where she brought out a small metal box. My hands shook as I unlocked it. Inside were documents, a flash drive, and a single photograph. The photo showed my mother and a much younger version of Laura standing together at a charity gala. They weren't just acquaintances. They looked like friends. I felt my chest tighten. Laura had told me she'd never met my mother. The documents confirmed the unthinkable. My mother hadn't just been a retired schoolteacher. She was the majority shareholder of a private import company worth over $83 million. And guess who the company's financial advisor had been for the past 7 years? Laura Holt. Everything inside me went cold. Had she married me to get access to my mother's estate? The flash drive contained financial transfers, huge sums moved quietly over time. And the last transaction? A payment made to Marco Rossi, just 1 week before the poisoning. I stared at the screen, realizing the truth, piece by piece. Marco had never been a friend. Laura hadn't just betrayed me, she'd orchestrated everything. The poisoning, the setup, the fall, and somehow, it was all tied to my mother's hidden fortune. When I left the bank, Edward Grant was waiting by my car. He looked uneasy. "There's more you need to know, Mr. Holt," he said quietly. "Your mother didn't die of natural causes." Edward's words hit me like a punch. My mother didn't die of natural causes. We sat in his car as rain streaked across the windshield, the city lights smearing like ghosts in motion. He pulled out a manila folder from his briefcase and placed it on my lap. Inside were autopsy photos and an official report stamped closed by request of family. Except, I never made that request. The toxicology panel was altered, Edward said quietly. Your mother's body contained traces of a compound similar to a cometanin extract from monkshood. It mimics cardiac failure. Your wife signed the paperwork releasing the remains before the second test could be ordered. My throat went dry. You're saying Laura had something to do with her death? Edward didn't answer directly. I'm saying the timing is suspicious. 1 week after the funeral, she transferred $4 million out of your mother's accounts into one she shares with your chef, Marco Rossi. For a moment, everything inside me went still. All the lies, all the setup, it had started long before the poisoning. She killed my mother, I whispered, and framed me to finish the job. Edward nodded grimly. It appears so. But there's more. Your mother anticipated this. That foundation, the Holt Trust deeds, not just money. It's evidence. She was gathering proof of corruption inside her own company, and Laura's name shows up more than once. She may not have acted alone. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments about which country you're watching this video from. Enjoy the story. I drove straight home that night, my mind spinning. When I opened the door, the house was dark, but Laura's perfume lingered in the air. Something was off. I flicked on the kitchen light. The counter was spotless, too spotless. All the knives were gone from the rack. Then I saw a single note lying on the table. Stop digging, Danny. You were never supposed to find out. They'll come for you next. There was no signature, but the handwriting wasn't hers. I recognized it immediately. It was Marco's. I bolted upstairs, tore through drawers, closets, the safe, everything. Gone. Their passports, her jewelry, half our savings. They'd vanished. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. I answered instinctively. Mr. Holt, a woman's voice said softly. Your wife boarded a private flight to Nassau 2 hours ago. She's meeting someone connected to the Rossi Group. If you want to clear your name, follow her. Before I could ask who she was, the line cut out. I looked out the window into the storm and whispered, Mom, what did you get me into? Whatever was waiting in Nassau wasn't just about the poisoning anymore. It was about the secret $83 million and who was really meant to have it. The next morning, I was on a flight to Nassau one way, no luggage. Just the flash drive and my mother's letter stuffed into my jacket. Every instinct screamed that I was walking into danger, but I couldn't stop now. If Laura and Marco had murdered my mother and framed me, I needed to see how deep the rot went. When I landed, the air was heavy with salt and humidity. I rented the first car I found and drove straight to the marina listed on the flight log. Dozens of yachts glittered under the sun like floating palaces. Near the end of the dock, I spotted her. Laura. She was dressed in white linen, sunglasses covering her face, speaking with a tall man in a grey suit. Marco stood behind her, scanning the water nervously. I ducked behind a shipping container and pulled out my phone. Zoomed in, snapped a photo. The man's face was familiar, but it took me a few seconds to place him. He was Vincent Dre, CEO of Rossi International Holdings, Marco's cousin and a man once accused of money laundering before the charges mysteriously disappeared. I watched as Laura handed Vincent a black folder. He opened it, glanced at the contents. then gave a small nod. A briefcase exchanged hands. The deal was happening right there. My pulse pounded in my ears. I stepped closer, trying to hear. Once it clears, Vincent said, he'll never be able to trace it. Your husband's name will stay in the system. You'll walk away free. Laura's voice trembled slightly. And what about the inspector? Vincent smirked. Dead men don't talk. Before I could process what I'd just heard, Marco turned. Our eyes met. His face went white. Laura, he's here. They scattered. Vincent bolted toward the yacht. Marco ran for the car. And Laura froze for just a heartbeat before following Vincent aboard. I sprinted after them. Security guards shouted, but I didn't care. I leaped onto the yacht as it pulled away from the dock, grabbing the railing just in time. Marco reached for me, shouting, "Don't make this worse, Danny." I swung the briefcase I'd grabbed from the dock and hit him square in the jaw. He stumbled back, crashing into the deck rail. Laura screamed. "Stop this. You don't understand, don't I?" I shouted. "You poisoned a man and blamed me. You killed my mother." Tears streaked her face. No, it wasn't supposed to happen like that. Marco was supposed to scare her. Not before she could finish. Vincent stepped out of the cabin, holding a gun. "Enough, you were both useful. But this ends here." I froze. Laura gasped, and then 3 gunshots shattered the air. The gunfire cracked through the ocean. 3 deafening shots that echoed across the deck. I hit the floor, covering my head. When I looked up, Marco was sprawled against the railing, blood pooling beneath him. Laura screamed, stumbling back as Vincent raised the gun again. His face come to calm. "You should have stayed quiet, Daniel," he said. "Your mother did." My breath caught. "What did you just say?" He tilted his head slightly, almost smiling. "You really think Laura killed her?" No, that was me. Your mother found out what we were doing with her company funds, how we were laundering money through Holt Imports. She wanted to shut it down. I made sure she couldn't. Everything blurred. The world tilted. Vincent had murdered my mother, stolen her company, used my wife to frame me, and I'd walked right into his trap. He aimed the gun at me. "You were just the cleanup. A way to close the books." Before he could pull the trigger, Laura lunged. She grabbed his arm, the gun fired, and the bullet tore through the glass window behind them. The yacht jerked violently as Laura fought him, screaming, "You ruined everything." I rushed forward, slamming into Vincent. The 3 of us crashed against the rail. The gun went off again this time. Vincent gasped, eyes wide, as he stumbled backward and disappeared overboard, into the dark water below. Silence. Only the sound of the waves and Laura's ragged breathing filled the air. She turned toward me, trembling. Blood smeared her hands, not her own. "Danny, I didn't mean for any of this." I cut her off. Don't lie again." Tears filled her eyes. "He threatened me. Said if I didn't help frame you, he'd go after the kids." I tried to stop, I really did. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to scream. But all I felt was emptiness. I picked up the briefcase lying near Marco's body and flipped it open. Inside were stacks of fake documents, offshore ledgers, and one small USB drive labeled Holt Legacy. "This is what they wanted," I whispered. "This is what Mum died for." Laura reached for me. "Danny, please, we can fix this. Start over." I looked at her one last time. There's no starting over from this. Then I walked away. By the time authorities reached the yacht, Laura was gone. They never found Vincent's body either, but the USB drive contained everything, proof of the money laundering, the poison payments, and the conspiracy tied to Rossi International. The news broke 2 weeks later, $83 million seized. International arrests made. They called me the whistleblower. But that wasn't what this was about. It was about truth and the price it demands. Sometimes, I visit my mother's grave and leave a white rose on the headstone. I tell her it's over, that the legacy she built won't be tainted again. But some nights, when the wind hits just right, I swear I hear her voice whispering, "Trust no one, Daniel. Not even the ones who say they love you."